Story 1. The Man in the Basement. Hospitals are strange places at night. During the day, they're alive with movement. Doctors rushing down corridors, families waiting anxiously in lobbies, the endless rhythm of beeping monitors. But at 3 a.m., the cafeteria is empty. The hallways echo, and the smell of disinfectant mixes with silence in a way that makes every sound feel louder. This is the story of Michael, a hospital security guard in the Midwest who worked the overnight shift. His job was simple: patrol the halls, monitor the cameras, make sure no unauthorized visitors slipped into restricted areas. But in the basement of the hospital, he discovered something that still haunts him to this day. Part 2, First Signs. Michael notices CCTV glitches near the basement morgue hallway. Motion alarms tripped, but nothing visible. He dismisses it at first as technical issues. One night, on his rounds, he hears faint footsteps echoing behind him. But every time he turns, nothing's there. Michael was used to strange noises. Old buildings creak, machines hum, vents bang. But this was different. These footsteps were steady, deliberate, as though someone was following him a few steps behind. Yet every time he turned with his flashlight, the hall was empty. Part 3, The Patient in the Gown. Climactic encounter. On camera, he sees a man standing barefoot in a patient gown at the end of the restricted corridor. When he rushes down, the hall is empty. Later on patrol, he physically encounters the man. Pale skin, hospital bracelet, vacant eyes. Man walks silently past him into a locked door and disappears. Michael's chest tightened. He raised his flashlight, the beam shaking in his hand. The man didn't acknowledge him, didn't speak, didn't even look. He just drifted down the hallway, his bare feet slapping softly against the tile. And then he walked straight into a locked maintenance door and vanished. Part 4, The History. Michael investigates. Asks nurses if a patient escaped. None are missing. Old security logs reveal entries from over 20 years ago describing the same figure. Nickname among staff: the man who never left. Nurses recall an accident. A patient who died on the operating table but was never logged out properly in the records. Michael wasn't the first. The old reports told the same story, word for word. Male patient, barefoot, hospital gown. Seen in basement corridor. Vanished, decades apart. Different guards. Same figure. It wasn't an intruder. It wasn't a patient. Whatever it was, it belonged to the hospital, just like the walls, just like the lights, just like the endless halls that swallowed sound. Part 5, The Last Shift. Michael tries to endure a few more nights, but experiences worsening events. Elevator moves on its own, always opening to the basement. Lights flicker whenever he patrols there. He hears whispering near the morgue, voices saying his name. One night, as he's watching the cameras, every single feed in the hospital flickers, except the basement one. In that feed, the patient is standing closer and closer to the camera, staring into the lens. Michael resigns the next morning and never looks back. On his last night, Michael sat frozen in the security office, staring at the screens. One by one, every feed turned to static. The cafeteria, the lobby, the stairwells, all gone, except one, the basement camera, and on it, the patient in the gown. Closer, closer, until his face filled the frame and the screen went black. Story 2, The Night Shift at the Mall. Part 1, The Graveyard Shift. Most people think of malls as busy, loud, and crowded. Food courts buzzing, kids running between stores, music blasting from every shop front. But after closing time, the mall is a different world. Empty corridors stretch for miles. Mannequins stare from behind glass, and the faint hum of lights is the only thing keeping the silence from swallowing you whole. This is the story of Kevin, a 29-year-old security guard who worked the graveyard shift at a suburban mall in the Midwest. His shift started at 11 p.m. and ended at 7 in the morning. At first, he thought it would be easy money. Walk the floors, check the cameras, drink coffee until the sun came up. But he quickly learned that the mall had secrets. And at night, those secrets came alive. Part 2, First Alarms. Events start small. Kevin gets alarm triggers in the toy store around 2 a.m. Every time he checks, the store is locked. Lights off, nothing out of place. One night, however, he hears a faint giggle echoing down the hall. He reviews CCTV, catches what looks like a mannequin moving slightly in the toy store window. But when he replays it, it's still. Kevin leaned closer to the screen, his tired eyes struggling to make sense of it. On the grainy feed, a mannequin in the toy store display seemed to shift just an inch, maybe less. Its head tilted. He rewound the tape. Nothing. On the replay, it stood perfectly still, its plastic smile frozen in place. Part 3, The Child's Laughter. Strangeness escalates. Kevin begins hearing the sound of a ball bouncing late at night. Once, while patrolling, a red rubber ball rolls slowly toward him from the dark end of the hallway. He freezes, shines flashlight. Corridor is empty. Later, he hears children laughing through the ventilation system. He asks another longtime guard about it. The man warns him, "Don't go into the toy store after hours." The ball rolled lazily across the tile, stopping just a few feet from his boots. Kevin felt every hair on his body rise. The hall was empty, silent, but he knew he hadn't been alone. He backed away, his flashlight shaking, but before he could radio in, a child's laugh, high-pitched and playful, echoed through the vents above him. Part 4, The Origin. Kevin investigates, finds local rumors, mall built on old fairgrounds. In the 1960s, a tragic accident occurred. A ride collapsed, killing several children. Rumor says their spirits haunt the mall, especially near the toy store, built directly over the accident site. The laughter, the ball, the moving mannequins all tied to them. The deeper Kevin dug, the darker it became. Newspaper archives told the story. A summer fair, a broken ride, children crushed when the steel beams collapsed. The ground beneath the mall had once been the fairgrounds. The toy store? Built directly where the accident had happened. Suddenly, the laughter, the ball, the mannequins, it all made sense. Or at least, as much sense as something like this could make. Part 5, The Last Patrol. Final incident. Kevin does a patrol near the toy store at 3 a.m. He sees the toy store lights flicker on by themselves. Inside, he spots the mannequins all facing the glass, pressed up against it, staring at him. His radio crackles. Faint child's laughter comes through instead of voices. Door behind him slams shut. In the reflection of the glass, he sees a child standing next to him, but when he turns, no one's there. That's the night Kevin quits. The mannequins were no longer posed. They were pressed against the glass, every one of them, their blank eyes staring directly at him. Kevin's breath fogged the window as he backed away, but in the reflection, he saw something that froze him in place. A child, standing right beside him, smiling. When he spun around, the hall was empty, and that was it. Kevin dropped his radio, grabbed his keys, and walked out of the mall. He never came back for another shift. Story 3, Warehouse Shadows. Part 1, Endless Aisles. Warehouses are built for storage, not for comfort. By day, they're full of workers, forklifts, and the constant noise of loading and unloading. But at night, when the crews go home and the lights go dim, they become something else entirely. Empty aisles stretch like canyons. Every sound echoes. Every shadow lingers just a little too long. This is the story of David, a security guard hired at a massive distribution warehouse in the Pacific Northwest. The building was over 500,000 square feet, packed with crates stacked 3 stories high. His shifts were simple: patrol the aisles, check the doors, monitor the cameras. But within 2 weeks, David would quit the job, shaken by something that stalked him through the endless rows of concrete and steel. Part 2: Footsteps in the dark. Events begin small. David often hears footsteps echoing on the catwalks above when he's alone. He checks. No one's there. Security cameras catch shadows moving across the high platforms. Once, he hears a metal locker door slam shut when no one is around. The sound was clear. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, pacing across the steel grating above him. David craned his neck, flashlight beam sweeping across the catwalks. Empty. When he checked the cameras later, he froze. On the grainy feed, a shadow, tall, human-shaped, drifted across the catwalk. But when he rewound the footage, the shadow wasn't there. Part 3: The Locker Incident. Climactic early encounter. While doing rounds, David hears a loud rattling from the employee locker room. A locker is shaking violently, as if someone is trapped inside. He approaches slowly, radio in hand. The moment he touches the handle, it stops. He opens it completely empty. Later, reviewing past logs, he finds reports of a worker crushed by falling pallets years ago. His locker had been that same one. The metal door banged like something alive was inside, fighting to get out. David's pulse hammered in his ears as he reached out, hand trembling. The moment his fingers brushed the handle, silence. He yanked the door open. Empty. Just an old lunchbox on the shelf and the smell of rust. But when he checked the archives later, that locker had belonged to a man who never made it out of the warehouse alive. Part 4: The Shadow Man. Events intensify. David keeps seeing a tall, thin shadow figure at the far end of aisles. Every time he approaches, lights flicker and the figure vanishes. The cameras often glitch, showing static or freezing when the figure is near. Coworkers tell him, "Don't stare too long into the dark corners. You won't like what stares back." The figure never moved. It just stood at the end of the aisle, taller than any man David had ever seen. His flashlight flickered, and in that split second of darkness, the shadow was gone. But he knew it was still there, watching, waiting. Part 5: The Final Night. Final incident. On his last shift, David patrols near the far end of the warehouse. Overhead lights begin shutting off one by one, leaving him in darkness. The shadow figure appears, this time closer, advancing as the lights go out. He runs, but every camera shows him surrounded by multiple shadows. He abandons his shift, leaves his badge and radio on the desk, and never returns. The lights snapped off in sequence, one after another, like dominoes falling. The aisle plunged into darkness, except for the shape. The shadow stretched taller, wider, each flicker of the lights pulling it closer. David bolted, his boots pounding against the concrete. In the security office, the cameras crackled with static. For a moment, every screen showed him, not alone, but surrounded. Shadows filling the aisles. Shadows closing in. He didn't wait to see what would happen next. He left his radio, his badge, and walked out into the night. He never went back. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and ring the bell so you never miss the next nightmare. And tell us in the comments, would you last a single night in these places? Or would you walk away before the shadows closed in?